What's up, guys? Tambo here with your Week 5 core report. Coming off a huge Week 4 where our guy Hoop shipped for $1 million, Week 5 was yet another busy one with our experts and members shipping left and right. Last Monday, RPS was all over the leaderboard, chopping the big Monday Night Football DraftKings Showdown contest. AP, Hoop, Statlers, Adam GQ6, and BX Boom all shipped the first place prize for $5,900 each. Humacom also hit that night, chopping first in several contests for $8,700. Later on in the week, Uncle T continued his heater, shipping for $11K in MLB. JT Hayes also hit for $20K in MLB. But our biggest hits came on the Sunday Week 5 main slate, where Big T continued his heater, hitting on his FanDuel core. Tony's core featured Josh Allen, Jeff Wilson, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Khalil Shakir, and Pat Freiermuth. By taking the discount with Shakir and going cheap at running back, Tony was able to round out his lineup, adding Gabe Davis for the double stack, as well as Raheem Mostert and the Patriots D, shipping Big T over $128,000 for the weekend. The Tone Dog was not alone, as our members rode that core to some big hits as well. C. Tangretti turned $21 into $1,800. DFS Dad hit for $8,800. Drew C.A. won $7,500. Jamie Walsh hit big for $20K. J-Dub 115 joined in with a $21,000 hit, and Kevin Barnhill shipped over $90,000. To top it off, our guy Swint parlayed a $333 ticket given away by Hoop on our live Sunday NFL show into $3,500. And the winning didn't stop there. KFALIK joined our free live Sunday Night Football Showdown show to lay out his strategy for the Bengals-Ravens game.
It is kicker season. We got the two best kickers in the league.
Thank you. Let's go, Kevin.
Get your 3 field goals from McPherson. Get your 2 field goals from Tucker, vice versa. Take your 10 points and go home.
Again, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube page, get it done now. It's easy to do and can actually help you learn how to win. KFALIK also called his shot in our premium Discord and used his member-provided game plan to ship $68,000. Our NFL content has been on fire all season, especially our Showdown stuff. I myself use my main core for my attack plan on Monday Night Football to cap off a week of winning at RPS with a King of the Beach ticket. Sign up for a Run Pure Sports membership today and get in on the fun. You have nothing to lose by trying us out. Remember, you're not winning with us, you're watching us win. Until next time, let's keep running pure. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka Toe Tag and Tambo. Back, got a little 2-man booth, maybe a 3-man booth. We'll see. But myself, JSU, we got the Monday review show. Going to be talking all things Week 6. Going to be talking those horrible afternoon games yesterday. They had good endings, but from a DFS and fantasy perspective, not exactly what we were looking for. Some guys came through, some sort of showed up out of nowhere. When you got Juju Smith-Schuster and Allen Robinson coming back from the dead in the same slate, it only makes sense. But JSU, you're still living over at the Knee House. How's it going for you, man? And man, what happened to Mangone this weekend over there? Got to give our boy a little shit right off the top, because I don't think he took any W's, did he?
Yeah, it was a tough week for Mangone on the slab, on the golf course, just all around, taking L's everywhere. Mangone struggled, I will say. And it's been a fun weekend, though. Watched some football, played some golf, got on the slab, worked with Grayson a little bit. Grayson's going to be a hooper, too. 8-year-old. Mangone even tried to take him down to get an L. We don't count that, though. He's got to beat a grown man in something. Like, he can't be trying to get W's against, kids. But it's just a tough scene overall for him. So I shout out Mangone. Come back stronger in March. He will, though. Mangone's a grinder. I'll say one thing about Mangone. He is a grinder, and he will try and work on his game and come back stronger. But the golf swing, he gotta get that one fixed, because that was rough, man. The golf swing was a little rough.
Yeah, tough week. We've seen it. Obviously, our guy Uncle T was streaming the videos and whatnot. We had everything rolling there, but Falik's going to join us here when he gets his camera ready. But the good thing is, and I will say this, DC knows it as well. Our boy Draft Cheat, he was saying it on Twitter. He called it out. Wait for March to get your money on Mangone, because that's when he's got his coach, Draft Cheat, over there. And when he gets his coach, he gets it in line. So I'm not sure if that's going to fix the golf game, but as far as on the slab, it could be helpful. Falik.
I saw Uncle Dunkle too. I saw Uncle Dunkle on Twitter. He wanted the smoke. He wanted him and Mangone, I think, against DC and Rubio for the smoke. He wanted the 2v2 smoke with Mangone as
DC said he ain't pairing up with Rubio, though. He said he's out on that matchup. So
DC, you miss Rubio. You might want to pair up with Rubio because Rubio was draining shots.
That fadeaway stroke he had rolling for a minute there on Periscope or whatever the hell it was.
I'll just say some of the shots were tough shots, like Mangone in his face, hand up. Sometimes hand down, man down, but Mangone got tired at that point. So, they were definitely tired.
Mangone, man down. That's a good one that you just went to. Falik, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing all right. A little tired, but I'm here.
Oh, shake it off, buddy.
I'm good. I'm good.
How was your week 6?
Week 6 was great because I got to meet Amber Niehaus and Grayson and Emily and Courtney. That was the absolute highlight. I also got to see this man over here, JSU. But the slate didn't go as well as I hoped. Started off really nice, and then Saquon, it was within 3 minutes that the slate just completely shut off for me. Saquon was the smart man who decided that when it was second or first and 6th, and he slid down at the 1 yard line instead of taking that end zone touchdown, which would have been obviously 6 points. Plus it would have been more receptions for Mark Andrews and everything like that. He decided to just take the slide and end the game. And then 2 minutes later, Ramondre decided to score a touchdown when he was off the field for the first 2 plays, when he shouldn't have been on the field for the 3rd down. He came in for the 3rd down and just shoved it right up our face and scored the touchdown. And then Arizona and Seattle, I don't know what happened there, except for I think there needs to be a little bit of evaluation of Cliff Kingsbury and his role. I was listening to the radio on the drive home from Casa Tony, or House Niehaus, as people call it. Yes. And Keyshawn Johnson said there needs to be some serious evaluation of Cliff Kingsbury, and Dan Orlovsky said it as well, because they didn't say Kyler played a bad game. They said it was a poorly coached and offensive schemed game, and Kyler still got 300 yards, but it was poorly schemed to be able to attack his things that he's good at.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers up just in front of me. I was going to try and pull them if you were going to talk a little bit longer, but I would argue that I think we're all just right. I know JSU has been on this. I was going to say Jay Niehaus, JSU at the Niehaus has been on this, but he has been saying it forever. Like, the situation here is just bad. Kyler played horrible. If you go look at the actual numbers yesterday, besides the yardage on paper, that game was a disaster, man. Like, what a mess for how bad Seattle's been and what teams have been able to do for them. Yes, blame Cliff some too. I saw a funny joke, like might as well leave Cliff in Seattle if you can't pull this one out, because man, it is bad for their squad. There's a lot of teams though yesterday. JSU, we'll keep talking on this front, but the Bay busts, we had Green Bay go down. We had Tampa Bay go down. We had San Francisco down by the Bay, but they were in Atlanta, go down. And then we had the Baltimore Ravens, if you want to plug them in there as well and just change your name up. But all the Bays, man, it was a bad day for them. It was a really rough day for some good teams out there, for people that were still in survivors, dead. I mean, my survivor I've talked about all season, 1,300, was already down to 90. Like 60 more teams went out yesterday based on that, including me with the Buccaneers. I have no clue how they don't come through in that game. 4 field goals to start the game from Suck Up. Just cannot figure it out. Brady yelling at the O-line. What were some other takeaways for you yesterday, JSU?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, first of all, we had people on Twitter like, at the end of the 3rd quarter, the Seattle game, they're like, oh, this Seattle-Arizona game's not going the way I thought it was. Well, no shit, man. Everyone thought it was going to be a shootout game. That's why it was one of the most popular games. Like, stop saying stuff after it happens. We all realize it. We're all watching it. Just terrible stuff out there on Twitter sometimes. But from the game perspective, Arizona not being able to run the football against Seattle, that was probably the most shocking thing. I don't care who they have back there. It don't matter if it's Eno Benjamin, if you can't run on Seattle, you're in trouble, right? And that was one thing in the game. You can talk about the scheme all you want, these guys, but almost all these teams have been able to run the football against Seattle's defense. And then what does that open up? It opens up everything, the play action passing, just stuff down the field. They didn't have that luxury, and I think that was one of the reasons why Seattle was able to kind of hold them at bay and keep them down, was they stopped the run. And you could tell Arizona's game plan coming in. Falik, we watched the game, and what were we saying? All that, why are they running just up the middle? You could tell Arizona wanted to establish the run. They couldn't do it, though. That was one of the big takeaways for me, and one of the reasons why that game kind of busted. Geno wasn't that good though either. It's not like I know they won, but like Geno was bad too. Arizona's D. I mean, I was on Arizona's D. The only guy I liked from Seattle was Kenneth Walker. I thought Arizona's D was a good play because I knew Geno was going to be popular. I knew Geno would finally have like a down to earth game one of these weeks. Everyone was on him. It was like the perfect time to play the defense in that spot. And you know, I wasn't really on the Seattle receivers either, because if I was fading Geno, I'm not going to play those guys who are going to be popular. So that worked out for me. Obviously, I felt good about that. But overall, besides that game, the other game's the Bills, the Bills Chiefs game. And I hate doing it all the time, but I will say me and Big T, we were pretty strong on this game. We felt Buffalo was just the easy winner. They were 2.5. You know, on top of that, everyone was just on the Chiefs, or they were just riding, like, I don't know, both sides. They're both good teams. They didn't take a hard stand. Like, Buffalo should have won that game by 10, 14. There were so many missed opportunities they had. And then we got our boy, AP. I love AP, but he's on Twitter talking about, oh, they missed a hold call, so the trip was fair because they held Chris Jones. He tripped him, AP. What do you mean? He tripped him. You can't trip. That's a penalty. They don't call the penalty. The Chiefs get the break there. They got how many holding calls down the field? I mean, it felt like every drive they got at least 2 down the field holding penalties, which I'm not saying they weren't penalties. I'm just saying stop acting like they got hosed and didn't get calls. All right. And the Bills obviously still overcame all that stuff and won. So take your L on Twitter. Von Miller don't need to trip. Von Miller just goes through and he sacks Pat Mahomes, AP. He's coming at you, stares you down after. He's looking at you. He's trying to find AP in the stands. AP's already gone. He said game over.
Oh God, that was good. Yeah, I like that. The other thing too, that afternoon game, soon I was actually I did a show with Pat Mayo last night. I was watching the games, and I said to him, as soon as I seen that everyone in the room and everyone on Twitter was like, this Arizona-Seattle game, I got it stacked every way. It just needed to go off. I was like, all right, I'm betting the under on this, immediately slamming it. He's there. He's like, yeah, that's probably a good play because I need it too. Everybody needed it. Of course it busts. Kenneth Walker, really the only guy. The defense is like you said, I guess, but man, just a complete bust. Everyone had that game stacked up left, right, and center, overstacked, like our boy Hoopster a couple weeks ago now with Detroit, Seattle. It worked out then when not everyone was on the overstack and everyone actually wanted to get those guys out of their lineups. Yesterday, complete opposite. Everyone wanted to overstack it, and it was way more affordable than the Buffalo Kansas City game. So I could see why everybody went there. And I was like, man, this is just not going to work out. And it wasn't even close. So Falik, talk to me a little bit about those afternoon games and then Buffalo, Kansas City as well. Your thoughts there, because still ended up to work out to be a pretty good game to watch because mistakes were made on both sides, some calls and stuff like we talked about, but good game. It just didn't, and it came through slightly in areas for fantasy. I think at the end, we'll talk about it, the Burrow stacks, but it came through a little bit more than Seattle, Arizona, but still just thoughts on those two games in the afternoon, especially.
Yeah, they were slow. Those 3 games in the afternoon were a lot slower. Tony continued to say to me the entire time, man, you're going to be looking good today because you're stacking the back. I ended up having to put one lineup because I forgot to enter it. I had to put a completely afternoon lineup in as the first set of games were going. Everybody was like, you're in a good spot because how slow the early games were going. But then you had the afternoon games. And what was it, JSU? We said there were 5 field goals in the first, an hour and 15 minutes.
It was 3-0, 0-0, and like 6-3 or something like that.
I think
And they were
halftime
like,
was 10-10, 10-10, and 12-3.
Yeah, it
Like
was.
that's
something
crazy.
bad.
It was just some really surprising games, and everybody thought that after those two afternoon games specifically were going to go off, and then you had the other game being the Rams Carolina game, and you expected at least a few pieces to do well in that spot, and unfortunately it didn't happen. And I think the storyline, and I hate to say it, but we're going to be listening to it all week on all of our media and everything like that, is going to be New York, New York, New York again. We're back to this New York world. Giants and Jets are both 5-1, and the Buffalo Bills just beat Kansas City. And the only other thing that New York is not living up to right now is the Mets lost, but that's a big story. And the Yankees forced a Game 5. So we're going to be listening about New York, New York, New York in football and in baseball for the next week on ESPN and all of our other shows that we watch and whatever it may be. And listen, they look good. I like Daniel Jones personally. I think that and I think that the big thing with New York, the two New York teams, is they got good coaches right now. They got coaches that are fighters, that are trying to build a little bit of a feel in that building, in their buildings, and they're doing a good job really getting people to buy in. And I think they got the buy-in for most of their guys on those teams. So yeah.
Who do you think has the better season between Jets and Giants? Leave the Bills out. We know what they are, but
yeah,
technically go with the New York, New Yorks. Let's go with them.
Give me the Giants.
Okay. JSU, best New York team. That's New York name.
I would go the Giants probably, but I kind of was I was higher on the Giants before the season. I thought they had the worst odds to win the division at the beginning of the year, and I'm like, how? Washington's clearly the worst team. I don't understand that. So I did have a bet on them to win at 8-1, just because I thought it was a decent bet. They were clearly the lowest odds team to win that division. So I did have a bet on that. But so I like the Giants overall throughout the year. I think the Jets, personally, they played Green Bay, and Green Bay, I think people just have to understand with Green Bay, they're not the same Green Bay team that you're used to seeing the last 5-10 years with Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's just, this team is not good. And I've been saying it now for like 3-4 weeks, but you can just tell something's wrong with Aaron Rodgers. Something's wrong with the offense. It's not the same without Devontae Adams. I don't know what it is specifically. They can't run the football as well. Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, they're not getting that type of, movement in the line for Aaron Rodgers' play action. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, the key with him is play action. He was always one of the best play action quarterbacks. He always does the great fake where you think the running back has the ball. He's one of the best at that. But when you're not running the football good, when you're not getting those plays down the field, it makes it a lot harder. And you're seeing it right now. No Devontae Adams, and Aaron Rodgers is definitely struggling. Also, too, it feels like every play he gets up and he's shaking his hand or his elbow, or
he doesn't seem right.
Wrong. For sure. He I don't know with him, but the team is just not as good. So I think people have to kind of lower their expectations with the Packers and the Jets. I'm not a Zach Wilson fan, but the Jets team is definitely, as a whole, much better than I think a lot of us thought coming into the year. So those are the two takeaways I have from that.
The Jets are 4-2. I apologize. Thank you, Vinny, for fixing that for me.
14-4 for Buffalo, New York, and New York is a record.
Anyways, what I think that in addition to all of this is that the salary cap in the NFL has really impacted teams, and it's time to start really looking inward and figuring out what these teams are. And I think that while we're probably overreacting and the media is overreacting to these New York teams, I think that they should also be overreacting to the fact that teams like Green Bay, teams like the LA Rams, teams like Denver, teams like even Arizona are teams that are going to need to start. You're going to need to start worrying about them soon. You're getting into the make or break parts of the season. The Colts were the same way. They're now 3-2-1 and got a big game this week on Sunday against the Titans in Tennessee. I think that's going to be a very, very big game, as silly as that sounds.
You got to worry about them now. Those teams, you
no, that's what I'm saying.
Now, not soon, not in a couple weeks. No, you need to worry now. Those teams are in serious trouble.
But it's all these teams that have these $50 million quarterbacks that are filling up the roster, and they're trying to fill in the roster after that, and they're trading away big pieces to get pieces and not able to build from below in the drafts and stuff like that. And these drafts are getting better and better as the years go by because these guys are insanely talented, and they only last 6 or 7 years while they're trying to get these other guys going. I think
you got to get something out of these other guys. You brought up Zach Wilson, but like they have a good coach, good T. Sauce Gardner's the man. He put the cheese head on at the end too. The guy, I think someone told me the stat yesterday. I didn't know he was this good, but like high school, college, and now NFL still has never allowed a touchdown ever in like any of his, basically that's your professional career. That's what I would call it. You know, you're leading your way up. Even high school doesn't really count. Like, it counts for this stat, but I mean, it's not really professional because you're not really getting paid. But the point being, never allowed it. So they've got that. And then they have Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall looks like a stud. We're about to talk DFS actually. Simon, if you want to pull up the Millie Maker winner, we can bring that up to start bringing it across. But just back to you, Falk, I was just saying, like, they actually have the team that you could build around, but you need, to JSU's point, you need Zach Wilson to come around a bit more as well. Make a
Absolutely.
Few, like, he tiptoed that line, and that should have been a pick when he tried to throw that ball. I think it was in the second quarter, third quarter, and it's like little things like that you just can't do. The play's over, stay where you are, move on. If he can start picking up the little things there, I actually would lean the Jets, and they have a little bit easier schedule too. I think the next couple matchups are potential wins, and then they play the Bills, of course. But just to point it out, I feel like they could keep picking up some wins along the way. Again, I think Alex, our guy in chat, said it. All New York teams will let us down. It's just a matter of time. Definitely feels like that. Maybe you could bet the Yankees, though, in Game 5. If we're going to keep this New York run of these wins. I don't know. But anything else, Falk, before we hop in? And then JSU, I'll come to you to talk a little bit about this lineup.
Another team to just add into your list is the 49ers versus the Falcons yesterday was also, I think all of us were shocked, at least at House Niehaus, of how dominant Atlanta looked. It wasn't even just necessarily the fact that they won by 14. They looked good as they were winning, and then I think that there were just a lot of surprises on the slate yesterday. I think that's
Atlanta
the big
won
thing.
Big T. The guys on the Print Factory called that spot though, because it was 5.5. They've been a covering machine. It was 5.5. Somehow it got to 3 by kickoff, and I'm assuming everyone just waited. That was, if they were getting the 5.5, they're like, can I get more out of this line? And when they didn't, that's when they dropped the hammer at the end and said they're covering again. And they did. They not only covered, but they won outright. As Big T likes to say, leave the points with the bookie. You can take that. I mean, I wouldn't have. That was a scary spot, but to cover at 5.5, that's why people liked it. That's why people slammed it. Did you have something there, JSU?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I know Big T has been high on Atlanta the whole season. And I remember doing the Print Factory with him, and he said the line's fishy at 5.5. I don't like it. And he's normally a San Fran guy. Anyone who knows him, he's a huge San Fran backer. Like, he loves San Fran and the way their team's built. But Atlanta, they've covered and obviously
every game.
They just, they're covering machines. And I know a lot of us on that show, I think, liked or didn't like San Francisco. I know Tony liked Atlanta for sure, but didn't like the line, either stayed away from it or said Atlanta's the side. We weren't betting San Fran. And obviously they won. So, I mean,
yeah, 2 things about that, guys. Do us a favor, hit the like button. We're at almost 200 watching. Let's get to 100 likes while we get into these reviews. But I was trying to say with that spot, because I was taking it from listening to Big T, like him and I always talk, we'll listen to something someone says and try and put something to it. And remember, JSU, when the 3 of us did the review show and he was giving me shit about Kittle that week, he's like, we need Kittle in a game where it's going to be close. We can't have him in these blowouts and stuff. Well, with that line moving, and it didn't work again yesterday. I think it was 8 for 83 or something, but it was a decent day. We had
that. You'll take
we'll take it. I just felt like the spot was better. But again, back to we'll talk some other news in a second with these lineups and just general stuff on the slate, because this lineup didn't have Traquan, but we'll get into it in a minute. But Atlanta D, when you saw the points drop like that, to me, it's like you can actually get on Atlanta D. Again, it didn't work out in this lineup, but they got 13 points, I think, at 2,500. So just to keep that stuff in mind, you're looking for these last minute moves. Again, another piece that wasn't in this lineup, but with the Olave news, originally at sort of Wednesday, Thursday, it sounded like he might clear concussion protocol. It came out on Saturday afternoon, evening, that it's unlikely that he goes this week. Again, then you got Traquan, which led to, we already liked Chase going up against no Lattimore, this DJ, You didn't need any analytics when you saw Joe Burrow walk into the building with the Jamar Chase LSU jersey on. Like, come on. So that sort of lined up. I had it in MME. I had some good scores. Our guy Nade Safai said he's got a 185. I was kicking around that with my Burrow stacks, but I wasn't getting to this build. I mean, it's a great build. I just didn't get to something like this, but let's hop in. JSU, I'll go to you first. We got Burrow to Chase, the run back with Kamara. We've got Waddle, Juju, Ayuk, Tunyon, Arizona D, and Deion Jackson. So not a lot of correlation after the fact, but it still makes some sense, and there's some leverage points and things like that. What do you see here, JSU, looking at this winning lineup from Westchester, BC? Shook it out, I think, by 12 or 15 points, actually. I think it was.
So I don't know if this guy had one lineup, 150. I have no idea. But I will say with this team, first of all, I was told that, 3 running backs, JSU, 3 running backs won the Millie Maker the last couple weeks. I mean, what's going on? Should we not be playing? Well, 4 wide receivers just won the Millie Maker this week. It just shows you that there's not always one way to go about things, and it's not going to be the same every week, right? This lineup, though, like you said, interesting. Outside of the quarterback, wide receiver, run back with Kamara, not really much correlation, but you got a lot of low ownership. You got the mid-tier, but he used mid-tier guys that no one was really on. That was one thing. He faded a few key spots that I thought was interesting. So I talked about the leverage with the Cardinals defense. Everyone was playing Geno Smith. That game was going to be popular. He literally only played the Cardinals defense. So he said, I'm not just fading Geno in his pass catchers. I'm fading Eno on the other side. I'm fading Brown. I'm fading Ertz. I'm fading all those guys. Kyler just played the Cardinals D. And then he did the same thing with the Bills. He faded the entire Bills side. He played one Chiefs receiver that, was not really highly owned, not really talked about in Juju. Obviously, Juju's had some struggles the last couple of weeks. So, I'm sure it was just like no one wanted to play him. He probably fit his build. It looks like the mid-tier wide receiver build in the middle kind of fit it. But outside of that, I mean, it's an interesting build. He played Jackson instead of all the popular running backs, and Jackson obviously smashed for the Colts, had like 70-something yards receiving too, which was wild. He got the rushing touchdown, 10 receptions. I mean, at 5,200 and 8.5%, that's a winner right there. So, Tambo, this lineup, like Tunyon was crazy. He caught 10 balls. I didn't see that one coming, but again, it's a week-to-week league, and we see it all the time where these dudes randomly will pop off. I think the lineup, though, the way it's constructed, I have no issue with it because he faded a ton of popular spots. Like he balled up and said, I don't care these late games. I'm not playing. I'm not going to play the ownership with the Bills. I'm not going to play the ownership with Seattle, Arizona. I'm actually going to take leverage against it and just say it's a defensive battle. Maybe some kickers get in there, which is kind of what happened. I mean, outside of Kenneth Walker, who really did much in that game outside of the defenses?
That's right. And then you got the Schuster. Like, I mean, there's a couple things. I'll go to you, Falk, and let you look at it. The one I saw right away, though, was like flip Chase and Waddle and put, instead of Waddle, you drop down to Breece Hall to get the secondary correlation, and you would have had, a higher score based on him beating Waddle, but, and a secondary correlation with Tunyon. But again, these are just minor things I'm seeing that could have made it work another way. But it looks like you said, JSU, he just plugged and played after he got his original stack in there. Then you could argue that like there was leverage by going with the Cardinals D against Kenneth Walker and Lockett, who were both popular. Like there's other things that I'm seeing in there. Deion Jackson with no Taylor, no Hines. That was crazy, by the way, Falik. Matt Ryan, 37 pass attempts in the first half. I think it was 7 for 70 and 8 for 80 in that range for Jackson and Pittman just in the first half alone. But go ahead. What do you see here, Falik? What do you see in the winner?
Yeah. I going to be honest, congratulations to Westchester, BC, but I absolutely hate your lineup for many reasons. So first of all,
Kevin, you can't say you hate the man's lineup. You won $1 million.
Kevin,
can I give my reason?
Give it an F- over here. Let's go.
I'm going to give the reason. The number one reason I hate his lineup is because he didn't allow himself to make any changes because he put Jamar Chase in the flex spot instead of putting him in the wide receiver spot and Juju in the flex spot. I'm sorry, but like it did not allow him to make any gone, like, if he thought his lineup was in a safe spot, he could have gone with a safer player than going Juju. I don't know where he felt he was, but
I just want to pause you for 1 second because I love it. And I knew you were going to do that, so I saved it. But our man Locks is in the chat. Shout out to Locks. Congratulations. Won a FFWC seat yesterday, which is amazing. And our boy Draft Cheat called him out on Twitter and said, what do you say? Like, stunting on him, you get 100+ style points for putting your flex guy in the flex when he should have been swapped
Something
with the
other. Owning libs with putting
owning the libs with the 100+ style
spot.
points for using your afternoon guy in the early spot. So
shout out to Locks, man.
And when you love a lineup that much, like Locks did, he just lays it out and puts it out there and ships with it. But I knew you would call that out, Falik.
But I do have to say, like, Juju was questionable. Like, he wasn't even a lock to play at the time. Like, I'm sure he was going to play, but he was listed as a questionable player. You never know what can happen in those situations. And the other thing is I like listen, I like the Kamara, like the correlation between Burrow and Kamara and Chase. I think you're getting the 3 best players on the field in that game. But it's I feel like it's just a lot of guessing after that. Like, how could you have told me that Jalen Waddle was going to be the guy when everything was going to Tyreek Hill with Skylar Thompson being on the field the whole time? Like, that was like, how can I don't see how you could have like projected any of these things, and they all hit. Listen, they all hit, and props to him for getting them. But tough build for me to make. Again, like, get off of Jalen Waddle and just go to Stevenson. You're saving yourself $200 and find a way to get to the Patriots defense or something like that. Like, if you think that they're that good or whatever it may be. Like, those are, again, the changes that I would have made on the build for sure.
But Kevin, his whole build, he didn't want to play chalk. Like, look at his build. He didn't play any real chalk pieces. Like, even Kamara, I thought he was going to be more popular, honestly, than 12%. In my head, I thought he was going to be like 15 or 20. Look at this lineup. He clearly did not want to play. And I didn't think Chase was going to be 14 either. And I guarantee you, I don't think anyone here thought Chase was going to be over 10%. Like, I you can tell me if I'm wrong, but there's no way he thought it. Obviously, he was on Burrow, who he knew was going to be lower owned, so he wanted that run back. But look at the lineup. Like, he clearly faded all the chalk plays, every single one of them. Eno, Kenneth, even the ones that crushed, Ramondre, all those guys, he faded them all. He just said, I'm not playing those guys. I'm fading all the chalk spots, and I'm playing lower owned leverage guys against all the chalk pieces. And like, Jackson crushed all the chalk. He did. You wanted Jackson on your team. That's just
what does leverage mean in this? Like, who did he leverage with?
He literally faded both chalk games outside of Juju in the defense.
He leveraged the slate, Falik. That's the one. This is the one that gets the D- because he's over leveraged. That's what they'll say in the newsletter. He had a great
again. I'm not trying. I'm not like I have less of an issue with the players that he chose, except for they're non-correlated, which is just something I don't do. I can't
bullet,
play.
By the way, too, guys.
Yeah,
it was. I can kind of tell
my
it
number
was a
one
single bullet.
My number one issue is that he couldn't have made any changes off of Juju that he would have felt comfortable with if Juju was considered out or had some issue. Like,
so your real problem is that he didn't leave the flex spot open for the four.
Absolutely, but I also will again. I build correlated lineups, you know that, and I just don't see it. Like, I just feel like it was except I understand the leverage with Cardinals defense and Juju, but I don't see any other spot that he leveraged except for just playing guys that are the second options or the third options for most of these teams. Like, Tunyon's the third option. Like, Jalen Waddle is the second option when Skylar Thompson's been on the field. Like, Ayuk's the third or fourth option on the team.
Does anybody have a Tunyon take? Like, just forget this lineup for a second. We just dissected it. The guy's username is also where he's from, I'm assuming. So shout out to my Canadian brother here in Westchester, British Columbia, Westchester, BC. It's like if you had New York, NEWYORK, NY. You live New York City, New York. That's what his name is. Westchester, BC, nice. So
Now,
what
is
is
it
the
possible this man just made this lineup like the night before?
Yeah.
Threw a single bullet in and just said, "Hey, if it ships, it ships."
it's called a shitter shipper, JSU. He
Yeah.
built it on the shitter and he shipped with it.
Yeah.
Does
there's
he
nothing
even
wrong
know
with
he
that.
won? No, I'm just kidding.
He might.
He might have
I know,
forgot
like
last
the
night
chat.
when he
Look,
was
I know
drinking all
people
night.
like
Probably.
Tunyon. I'm saying, what was the overall take on Tunyon? Just the fact, like again, Big T had him in his player pool. Some people liked him. I used him as a secondary stack because of Breece Hall, just to put someone else in. I like Dobbs better at 4,800. I just thought he was one of the main options. If it wasn't going to be Lazard getting shut down, which he did not, but if he got shut down by Sauce, I thought it would be Dobbs. Like, to me, that's where maybe that's just where it comes from. Why not go to the next tier if you didn't have, if you weren't in on Lazard, you could easily just say, and I'm not going to Dobbs, I need someone cheaper, another cheap tight end. But did anybody else have a reason to like him? Like, was there something else you guys heard out there?
I mean, it might have been the fact that I'm pretty sure Tony, we both thought the Jets were the right side of that game. We both weren't high on the Packers. So maybe he thought if the Jets were up, there was just more throwing in general and they need him up there, to catch balls. Lazard has been fine this year. Dobbs has been kind of hit or miss, but that could have been it. Tight end wasn't really strong. There wasn't a lot of obvious cheap plays, I think, at tight end either. Like, there wasn't like guys that were cheap. There were so many of them there. So he kind of fit in no man's land and no one was going to own him. So maybe that was some of the thought process, but I guarantee you no one thought they were getting 10 catches. No way anyone thought when rostering him, he was getting you 10 catches. They were probably thinking he might get 2 touchdowns. Like literally he could catch 2 touchdowns for 40 yards in 4 balls. You know what I mean? But at that point he gets there, right? Like no one saw that type of volume. I just think it was more no ownership. The Jets were good enough to maybe be ahead in this game, to maybe push the Packers to throw more in this game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you look at it there, that makes perfect sense. I know Big T, like I said, had it in his player pool. We talk about that. If you guys aren't on Run Pure Sports to see this stuff, that's exactly where people are getting this stuff from. That game, I talked about it in the chat just now, but basically, the thread that I put up on Twitter at Toe Tag and Tambo, Big T talked about it as well. Warren Sharp had mentioned about how this game could have been a little bit of a back and forth. And it kind of happened in the end. 27-10 is not the exact score you want to get out of it, but just as an example. And then, of course, you also had the Randall Cobb injury too. So, but not a guy that we were in love playing. I think Big T had him way down the list. Like, he had Lazard up there. You guys can see it now. He had Dobbs up there. He had Tunyon as his number 3. But again, too, this is just, the reason I asked about it, if you're on Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson, like he was, you're definitely on Tunyon. Like you are in that game based on that. I'm saying I used it some as a secondary because I wasn't on Lazard. I thought about Sauce being there and I thought about Dobbs. My core had Breece Hall and Dobbs in it, and it could have went to the other one. I played Gentry, who Big T also had in his spot, and I used Fournette and Gentry as a way to round it out as another secondary stack in some of my lineups. But in the end, it ended up being Tunyon. That helped it out. And if you are a premium member at runpuresports.com, this is an example with Big T's player pool of what you get. JSU does it as well, this exact same way. And then we have the part where you see DK core and FanDuel core. You get those cores from myself and others on the site that have it up there where you can actually see it. Guys like Locks, who we talked about earlier in the chat, Falik sometimes, especially Falik does Showdown, but they also put it up there for other spots as well and in the Discord too. So either way, just go ahead.
Let me throw out one thing and I'll be done with the Millie Maker lineup. Just so everybody knows how I would have ended up approaching this to correlate it, just so you can understand the thought process I would have gone through. Breece Hall instead of Alvin Kamara, and then you're playing just the Cincinnati side, and you're dropping 900, and then you're going from Ayuk up to Adam Thielen for $500 more, and you're getting the correlation there at least, with knowing that New Orleans was going to have to spread out a lot of the wealth yesterday because they were missing so many guys that they were going to have to spread it out even more. Alvin Kamara, like, again, I've been saying all year, I'm not playing Alvin Kamara when Taysom Hill and Mark Ingram are active. I'm not going to change my mind on that. But for those that have been watching the show, but yeah, that's the 2v2 I would have done, to be honest. If I'm building that lineup, it would have lost. I'm sure it would have lost if I had to guess. But if I'm building the lineup like I usually build it, that would have been the 2v2 to get some correlation between Miami and Minnesota, and they get some correlation between Green Bay and New York, and you still have Burrow who throws the ball all day, all night, and has some rushing upside. And then you got what was considered probably the best wide receiver option on the slate in Jamar Chase, and you still have the leverage of the two guys that JSU was talking about with Juju and the Arizona defense. Just so that's the way I build, so to understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, Michael Natorsky in the chat saying we're salty. You're new. We've been doing the show every week for over a year and a half now. We do this every Monday. We're excited for Westchester, BC. What we're trying to do is dissect these lineups to figure out how we could have got there, maybe how we build differently, ways that we have ideas, theories, going against the slate to look back and learn from it. If we lost yesterday, like I did, I don't give a shit. We move on. Nobody cares. Work harder is a saying for a reason. This is how you get better. And that's what all people watching are trying to do. Learn more about DFS, learn others' thought processes, try and work through them and be able to put them in and implement themselves so that it's not just give me your plays, give me your plays. We have the option there. But even with Big T's player pool, as you saw, that's all the options he's using. And a core is a good base to go off of, but you can use that to ship and put together your own builds with thoughts that you have based on that. And Dominic Brown says, who says correlation works? If you go back and read about all the winning lineups, it definitely works, but you can get there without it. That's not what we're trying to say. The point is when you do put correlation into your lineup, you need less things to go your way. For example, if you use 9 random one-offs based on fantasy points, like sometimes people do it in cash game lineups, but even those are usually more correlated. But just saying, could it get there? Absolutely. But you need 9 individual events to happen. When you stack it up with Burrow, Chase, and Kamara on the run back, you've already taken up 3 of your 9 spots. Over 33% of your lineup is built up, needing basically that one spot to go your way. If Burrow connects with Chase for 2 touchdowns, it's likely Kamara is involved the other way. Kamara did not fully come through. He had like 18 yesterday, but the point being at 6,700, it's not that bad. He also was 1 yard shy of the bonus. You sort of started to get it going your way. Like literally at the end of that game, guys with that mini stack could not be happier because it could have been a field goal, like sort of to end it. They go to Chase. He swoops a guy, beats another guy, gets in the box, which puts them ahead and then allows Kamara to get more shots the other way to hit the bonus, and all those factors didn't fully happen. But that's why you're putting the correlation into your lineup. Simon, you can pull up the showdown winner, but JSU, anything else you want to add on anything that we've talked about in general and just the thought on the show premise of what we do here? Because that's the obvious stuff, right? What people are trying to learn.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm not salty at all. I understand kind of the line. I knew I could tell when I started reading the lineup that he probably had one lineup. It's probably just something. And these are the things, like, take your shot. If you're playing the Millie Maker, Tambo said it perfectly. There's not always one way to do something. There's not always one way to go about something. I just, when I started talking about the lineup, I talked about it. I literally was told last week, 3 running backs, JSU. They've been shipping the Millie last couple of weeks, 3 running backs. Well, now we got 4 wide receivers, like low ownership. It doesn't matter. Last week we saw higher ownership, right? Every week it's different, where you're like, how did this dude with double-digit ownership on like every spot ship the Millie? But that stuff happens sometimes. This guy clearly wanted lower-owned guys. He wanted no part of a lot of the chalk plays, and he wanted the Burrow, Chase, Kamara stack. Like, that's what he wanted. That was his correlation, and, he leveraged the slate. I'll keep saying this. That's what he did. I don't care what anyone says. He honestly, Tambo, he might have not even thought of it that way when he built the lineup.
He might not know it. That's what I'm saying. When you say leverage the slate, because Dylan just asked in the chat, he says, what do you consider leverage? What you're saying is not purposely, but in the sense of he's saying, you know what? I don't like any of the chalk, so I'm going to build what I like, and I'm just going to say I'm going to go against what everyone else on the slate is doing.
Or he's saying, I'm lighting this 20 on fire either way. I'm putting it in a damn Millie Maker with 100,
for sure,
500,000 other people. I might as well just, put a team with a bunch of low-owned guys in, and leverage the slate that way. And who knows? You never know. We talk about it all the time. What's the difference between spending $20 in the Millie Maker and going to eat? When you go to eat, you're spending $20 pretty much everywhere you go almost. Right. When you go to the movies, you're spending $20. When you do just about any activity nowadays, you're spending that type of money. It's the same thing. It's for enjoyment. It's for a little sweat.
I
we're on
100%.
here, yeah, and we're on here talking about how people can learn a process to maybe consistently build to help you consistently win. But we're also not going to lie and say that's the only way to do it. That's just the way a lot of us build naturally. But I won't sit here and lie and say that's the only way to do it, because it's not. There are other ways to do it and get it done. And there's obviously a little luck involved into it as well. This is DFS.
That's what, like, people like, that's, I mean, people are like, oh, you put the guys that score the most points. I know it's a joke. I'm saying, but win or learn is what our sort of mantra is here. I would say is where it's like, well, if you didn't win yesterday, which only one person wins the Millie, what can you try and take away and learn from? Maybe it's nothing. Maybe there's nothing that you can take away, but you can try and take away something from it. And like Falik did, and like I did, where we tried to put spins on it of what we might see, how we would get to a build that could compete with it, or in our case, beat it, and actually could have got there with sort of less things needing to shake out our way. It doesn't mean it's right. It's results oriented in the fact that we're looking at it after, but we're trying to learn from it. And then Dylan did ask, like, how do you leverage someone? I think I'll just explain it quickly, my take on it. Like, this is pretty standard, I think, but just for those watching who don't always know, leverage and a pivot are different things. Like, if you want to leverage someone, let's say you want to leverage Ramondre Stevenson, you do that by playing Hunter Henry or Jacoby Myers. You're literally going to the same game, the same spot, the same offense, but you're saying, I don't think Ramondre is going to bang in 3 touchdowns or get all the love that 60% or 40% of the field thinks that he is. I'm going to leverage it and play someone else that could steal those touchdowns, for example, or those
I'll
points
give you
away.
another example, and it doesn't have to be a low-owned leverage play either. You could have leveraged and say, I know Geno's going to be one of the most popular quarterbacks, Geno plus receiver. I'm fading that, and I'm just playing Kenneth Walker, right? You could have known Eno Benjamin was the most popular running back, or one of the 2 most popular running backs. You're going to play Kyler and Marquise Brown, or you're going to play Kyler and Rondell Moore. It doesn't have to be in a sense of super low-owned guys either. You could just say, I'm going to fade that spot and hope there's more passing touchdowns and not as many rushing touchdowns. You're saying it like how this guy did, where he kind of leveraged it and played some guys that were just like kind of out of the blue, lower.
Yeah, well, that's why I brought it up, because he probably, even if he did it by accident, by playing the Arizona D, he was saying, I don't even need the Arizona guys. I don't need the Seattle guys that are popular. Lockett and Walker were both popular. And he said, I'm going to take the D.
Not that crazy.
Right.
Like, it wasn't that crazy. If you know one side offense is going to be the most popular side in DFS, or one of the 2, taking the defense against them, if you're not playing any of those guys, makes all the sense in the world. I talk about it all the time, but that's the way you can get leverage on the slate. If you know one side, this is where ownership plays a massive part. We say it all the time with the Josh Jacobs thing a couple weeks ago when our guy Hoop shipped the Millie. If you told people Josh Jacobs was going to be 6% owned, like 6% owned in that Millie make, that would have made all the difference. But the problem was all the ownership projections were saying he was going to be 20+% owned. And that was that was a huge difference in our guy Hoop shipping the Millie, was 6% Josh Jacobs when everyone thought he was going to be 20 something. That happens all the time. If you know, though, one side is popular and you can go against it and know how to kind of go against it and hope it fails that way, which is what he did playing the Cardinals, that's massive. That's what you should do in tournaments, especially if you don't like the spot as much as the field.
Yeah, and there's more. We're going to go to Showdown in 1 sec, Falik. I'm going to start with you on that winning lineup with Mr. Ferguson at the top. But last thing, because they asked about the pivot, there's more advanced to everything that we're talking about, and that's what people love about Run Pure Sports is we have people that are actually putting real money on these tournaments, high stakes, everything, all levels of buy-ins, but helping people that are trying to learn and get started. And so a pivot would be different, where if you said, I don't like Ramondre Stevenson, I just think New England's going to suck, so I don't need to leverage him. I'm just not going to play him. I'm going to pivot to Breece Hall instead. I like his spot. He would be more popular if it wasn't for Ramondre Stevenson. I'm going to go to Breece Hall here and pivot from Ramondre Stevenson. Again, you're allowed to play them both together as well. My point just being, if you wanted to do that, you could do it. A more advanced would be a lot of people that were playing Ramondre might play Njoku on the other side of that game. And that's where you could have really pivoted a full secondary stack and said, I'm going to double down and go to Breece Hall from Ramondre Stevenson and from Njoku up to Tunyon and I'm going to cross off that way and have almost the same secondary. I'm going to have a secondary stack built the same way, but with 2 pivots and 2 spots where I'm way off the chalk. And if mine hits, I beat a bunch of those lineups that have that other secondary correlation. So I definitely like that call. But Falik, I'll go to you. Let's get into Showdown. Actually, no, I don't think we're going to do JSU a preview of tonight. We've got so much we got the Showdown show coming out. Falik's going to do his stuff up later. I'll have my attack plan. We'll have all the core plays and everything on the site. But let's end the show with last night's winner. This is the 3rd straight in a row that we've had a individual shipper. And JSU, I know you got to go, so why don't you start us off here? Just give us your thoughts on it. But all they did was they left money on the table and they went to Ferguson at 0.3% captain ownership. Of course, they did more than that, but give us your thoughts on this winning lineup.
Yeah, and they faded. The defenses were popular. They faded the defenses. I don't think any kickers either. Listen, I don't like these builds with the $200 guys at the captain spot. I like them more like in the flex when I play those cheap dudes. But it was unique somehow. No one had them. I think it was because more people were on what's the kid's name? Hendershot or whatever.
Yeah, Hendershot was the guy that would have projected better.
This is an example of a lineup I personally would probably never play, but it was unique. It shipped him to 500K. He got the $200 dude in the box too, which was huge. Obviously for this lineup, getting that touchdown was massive. And he faded like a lot of the ownership with the defenses, some of the kickers, I think he had Hurts, but Elliott was like the other key piece too. Elliott coming in at 19%, getting in the box was huge for this lineup too. I had some Elliott too, just the way my teams kind of shook out. But getting that $200, tight end in the box was huge for him. But again, this is example of I would play this $200 guy in the flex, but I probably, unless there was something random, I probably would never play him in the captain. But shout out to this guy for, getting it done and solo shipping too.
Yeah, I think it was 46,700. JSU, if you got to go, man, it's all good. Again, broke it down solid. Appreciate you. Love doing the show with you. But me and Falik will round it out. I got some more thoughts. I know Falik will have some thoughts. You'll have all your content up on the site tonight. So shout out to JSU. Appreciate you for joining us once again. Falik, give me your thoughts on this winning lineup, man.
No, I think that the big thing, in addition, like I said to all the guys at House Knee House that the $200 tight ends are back in play, and I ended up not playing any of them, which is a little aggravating because I do like my $200 tight ends every once in a while. I don't know if I would have gotten on to Ferguson over Hendershot or McKeon or whatever, and that's why I balked on it, to be honest, when looking at all the numbers. But the big piece was going with Zeke over CD and Tony Pollard, who were the chalkier plays. He had enough money to go to Tony or to go to CD, and then Tony Pollard was projecting pretty nicely as well. But avoiding CD is the big play of this build. I'm sure if you've tried to find a Ferguson with CD instead of Zeke, I'm sure there were a few teams that fell into that boat, but leaving that money behind, going down to Elliott, and it completely makes sense to get that again, the leverage off of it. He played that Cooper Rush can't pass it. Zeke's going to do some moves, do some stuff, and Ferguson's going to get some targets, which he did. Cooper Rush cannot throw. I'm looking forward to Dak being back next week. But yeah, it's a perfectly, and then he went with the 4 big pieces for Philly. And I think that it is a very fair way to approach it. Again, playing the 200 captain in this spot is a tough spot for me to do when you have a guy like Jalen Hurts and have all these kickers, but the kickers and defense let a lot of us down, unfortunately. Last night, we've been playing kickers and defenses all throughout the last few weeks. And last night, I said to Tony, unfortunately, it was true. Sirianni does not like kicking the ball. He likes going for it on 4th down more than not. And he has Jalen Hurts on 3rd and 1s and stuff like that allow him to just push what people are calling an unfair advantage of putting 3 people behind him and pushing him into the first down is a strategy that has not been used much in the NFL, and now it's being used a ton because of a guy like Jalen Hurts who's able to get them there easily.
Yeah, I think a couple things, like someone you mentioned the Lamb thing. I'm pretty sure at 46.7 that Rush would have easily fit as well. And when people put a pass catcher in the top, even if he is cheap, I think most would think I still have to pair him up with Cooper Rush. I think he could afford Rush, right?
Yeah,
He could, yeah. So that was my first thought, was that. But again, if you're going to do this cheap captain, that's another thing that people need to keep in mind. It actually, for me, it crosses over to main slate as well. Like if you're looking at us, like I also on main slate don't love always to put like a $8,400 Diggs into a lineup without Allen, because at 8,400, if he really pops off enough to ceiling out and get the line, it's not always this way. I know it's not true, but it's just how I think. Versus if I've got a cheaper guy like Alec Pierce, I don't need to play Matt Ryan. I can just play Alec Pierce, run him across from a cheap Zay Jones or Travis Etienne at running back or whatever it is, and be able to set it up that way. I'm okay with that. But even on Showdown, when you got the cheap guy up top, and I sprinkle these guys in for sure, but you don't need to set up the same rules that you would think. It's very plausible that Ferguson gets there without Cooper Rush, and that it's Elliott that does the work, or that it's another wide receiver picking up PPR points. It wasn't Lamb last night, but it could have been Lamb last night. So that's kind of the point there. The other thing is, if you're going to play the cheap captain, you got to get different with it. So don't max out your salary and just plug in. I think that was another good takeaway for me, is like you could get Hurts, Brown, Smith, Sanders, which to me is their offense. I know it's annoying on the Philly side that you have guys like Gainwell and Scott and Goddard and all these dudes, but at the same time, when you're trying to build something like this, you kind of just want to stick to the core roots and say, I'm already crazy up top and I'm leaving money. I don't need to mess around with all those other guys. And then on the other side, by not putting in Rush, you just give yourself a chance to run it more unique. It does say in the brackets, or the parentheses up top, I should say, a 2. I'm not sure how many lineups. I didn't look at it, but maybe they did run it with Hendershot instead of Ferguson up top. Maybe they also ran it with Cooper Rush instead of Elliott, and both. Like you could run this 6 ways and just use up 6 of your 150 on this idea and say, I'm sticking with my core 4 on that side. And I'm going Elliott, Rush, Lamb, and I'm going Ferguson and Hendershot up top both times. So I could definitely see where you could do that. I've got no problem with going that way. And you just know that likely the one without Rush or Lamb is the most unique. But again, how used would a Lamb version of this have been? Like 12 people, 50, like it wouldn't be that many and would still be a pretty good chop. So keep that in mind when thinking about things for tonight. Yes, unfortunately, we do have the Denver Broncos country. Let's ride back.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I can't wait.
You like this slate? Do a quick run through for us. What do you like so much about it? And we'll get out of here.
No, I just think that it's going to be, this is, I think, the true test for the Broncos finally, not finally, but the true test of like, what do they have? They're going against the Chargers defense that has not been very good this year. No Nick Bosa. So like, there's a little bit less of a concern on, is it Nick or Joey? I can't remember which one. It's Joey on their team, isn't it? One of the Bosas.
Yeah, but yeah.
One of the Bosas for the Chargers.
Joey's the Chargers. Nick is for the 49ers.
Yeah, I knew it the wrong way, but Joey is going to be out, so that allows a little bit more protection for Russell Wilson, because they're not going to have somebody attacking him at all times, and you have injuries again and decisions to make based off of those, and you got some prices that are kind of nice. Like I'm going to just say right now, Mike Boone looked really nice at the end of the game last game when and he's 4,800. I think you got a decision to make. They're saying KJ Hamler, they're going to get him more involved. He's 3K or whatever he is. Like, there's some interesting decisions that are going to be made tonight. And the big one is do you think Russell Wilson is going to be able to be the 300-yard passer that he has always been in these spots specifically? Like, this could be a nice little offensive game if they want it to be, because the Chargers, for the most part, where their balls are going as well. So, but then you have Eckler, who Hamler, isn't getting as many snaps.
That's the narrative. They owe Hamler for the end of that last game where they didn't hit him. But also, too, I saw a pretty funny tweet about last game. Remember what happened with Hamler? Was on the right side wide open, and then someone posted it side by side to Russ at the Super Bowl when he threw the pick against the Patriots. It was like, there's a reason he doesn't throw it to that side anymore. So that's why he did not even think to look that way, because he has bad experiences in that spot going that way. Go ahead.
Oh, I forgot that Latavius Murray is going to be playing tonight as well. They brought Latavius in. You got to think of what role he's going to have with those other two running backs as well. It's just going to be, it's a little messy on the running back side for both teams, honestly. Eckler is priced up quite high, but he's been very productive when he is in, which is nice, but they are trying to get less usage out of Eckler compared to past seasons, it seems like, and I don't know if that's going to change.
Yeah, we'll see. Eckler should be a very popular captain coming off 2 huge games. So we'll see how that shakes out. We'll have more, of course, over at Run Pure Sports. If you guys can do us a favor on the way out, hit that like button. Helps us out a ton. If you haven't yet subscribed, we crossed the 12,000 number. Now our next number we're going for is 15,000. So let's keep it moving on the subscribers. We appreciate you guys always. We'll have more content here throughout the day. That's going to do it for this week, though. For Falik, for Simon behind the scenes, and for myself, Toe Tag and Tambo. Simon, get us out of here, man.